Hey there, AK here. About 2.5 years ago, I reviewed the POCO F1 and I was so impressed by the performance it brought for how little I paid that I was eagerly waiting for its successor. But for over a year, there was no news about it or even the POCO branding. Then, in February of last year, POCO made a return with the POCO X2, but it wasn't the flagship we were waiting for. A few months later, POCO launched the POCO X3 Pro, though that one was really costly. It seemed like we were never ever getting a flagship killer like the POCO F1 ever again until this device arrived. In this video, let me share with you my experience with the POCO X3 Pro after using it for over a week. From a distance, the POCO X3 Pro looks a lot like the POCO X3 NFC. In fact, the shape is so identical that the same case fits on both and the cutouts are in the same position. This isn't a bad thing, as if you do not like the included clear jelly case, you can easily find a new one for the POCO X3 Pro on day one. Upon closer inspection, you'll notice that there's actually some differences. On the S3 NFC, the entire back is glossy plastic, while on the Pro version, you have matte on the side while the center is glossy. The POCO X3 Pro is available in 3 colors: metallic bronze, frost blue, and the phantom black, which I have here. While it's called black, it isn't really black. It gives off a little bit of a purplish tint and can look blue under certain lighting conditions. And yeah, look at that logo, that gradient is so cool. Just like the regular S3 NFC, the POCO X3 Pro has a USB Type-C port on the bottom together with a headphone jack. Yes! And on top we have an IR blaster which can be used to control your TV or aircon. There is also a fingerprint scanner built into a power button and it's really fast. Just like the regular S3 NFC, this has a 6.67-inch Full HD Plus IPS LCD display that supports 120Hz refresh rate. Though do take note that this is set to 60Hz by default and you have to enable it in the settings. For someone like me though, I really can't tell the difference, so I would rather turn it off to save battery life. It has a cutout for the selfie camera on top, in the middle, which I believe is for symmetry. But when watching videos, it can be really distracting and I would rather have it at the side of the display instead. Next, let's talk about performance, and this is where this device really shines. It's powered by the brand new Snapdragon 860 processor, which isn't as powerful as the 888 or the 870, but nevertheless, at this price, it beats out the competition. In Genshin Impact, the graphics is set to medium by default on the S3 Pro, as compared to low on the S3 NFC. However, even at the highest graphics settings, this device performs really well, probably due to it having a Full HD Plus display. That said, the S3 Pro heats up a little near the camera after a while even on medium graphics. If you intend to play on highest graphics for a long period, I would highly recommend getting a Black Shark cooler. Lighter games like Call of Duty Mobile will run very smoothly on this, even on max graphics. Speaking of Call of Duty Mobile, I did some tests and each game only drains about 1 to 2% battery, and that is thanks to a large 5160 mAh battery on this. Of course, if you're going to play more intensive games like Genshin Impact, then the battery is going to drain much faster. But for people that don't even play games at all, this thing can easily last you for 2 days or even up to 3 days. With large battery, you can expect longer charging times, but thankfully there's 33 watts fast charging here. The included wall adapter supports 33 watts fast charging, though I'm getting mixed results from it. It doesn't seem to be charging at 33 watts most of the time, and this device will take about 1.5 hours to 2 hours at that speed. But when I switch over to my own personal charger from another device, it seems to be charging at the claimed speed of approximately 1 hour. Next, the cameras. Both of these devices have a quad camera setup, though they are actually very different. The main camera of the S3 Pro is only 48MP versus 64MP on the S3 NFC. However, the resolution doesn't tell the full story. This device is much better in low light conditions. Just take a look at this image. And when you turn on night mode, this device just slays the NFC version. In the day, the S3 Pro doesn't lose out to the S3 NFC either. Photo looks crisp and vibrant, but I would highly recommend you to turn off the AI mode, as for some reason, it is super exaggerated on this and colors can look really off. For the sake of comparison, and also partly because I took most of the photos already with AI mode, the comparisons here are going to be both devices with AI mode turned on and HDR set to auto. For zooming capabilities, both devices only support 10 times digital zoom and they are pretty comparable, though I would say that the NFC version has slightly more consistent colors across different zooming settings. And here are more photos taken with the POCO X3 Pro. They are pretty good for the price, I would say. Next, there's also a difference in ultra wide angle camera. This one is 8 megapixel versus 13 megapixel on the S3 NFC. But just like before, specs don't tell the true story. This one is better under low light, and additionally, you get night mode on this. Before we move on to the remaining two cameras, let's talk about videos, and this is one that's really interesting. The main camera has a steady mode and it's super smooth when you are moving just slightly, but when you are running, the calculations are unable to keep up and you can see that it's bumpy. However, it can also record with the wide angle camera and that one is super duper smooth. Just take a look at this comparison. In both videos, I'm running at about the same speed, but you can hardly tell that I'm running in the ultra wide angle. And here is another video taken with the ultra wide angle. Isn't it so smooth, just like a GoPro? Next is the 2 megapixel macro camera, and despite its low resolution, I'm actually really impressed by its performance, especially at night. Last but not least, we have the 2 megapixel depth sensing camera, and this one isn't impressive at all. Just take a look at this image, it failed to detect the cable of my earpiece when intersected with the background. Lastly, we have that 20 megapixel selfie camera on the front, and it tends to overexpose images a little. Before I move on, I would like to clarify that this device actually has NFC. Now let's talk about the software. POCO X3 Pro runs MIUI 12 on top of Android 11 out of the box. Normally I'll be happy about having the latest Android version, but not this time. Android 11 brought greater file restrictions, which meant that users are no longer able to access certain directories where app data is stored. Enough about Android 11, now let's talk about MIUI 12. As compared to using it on a device like the POCO M3, it's a lot more enjoyable to use it on the POCO X3 Pro because MIUI is actually full of a lot of beautiful animations and it's only through this buttery smooth performance that you can truly appreciate it. MIUI 12 is really customizable. Do you remember my Vivo Nest 3 review where I praised Vivo for allowing users to customize the slider and the options for the camera modes? Well, that is here too, so great job Xiaomi. And they took it a step further. You know how you had to swipe all the way to the right to access those less used modes? Well, on here you can choose the option to just swipe up from any mode to access those additional modes. Really convenient. Some people may ask, are there ads on MIUI? Well, yes and no. The theme store has some ads and you have to watch some ads when you download premium themes or wallpapers. But that is understandable since Xiaomi has to pay those designers for the wallpaper and themes. But what I cannot understand is why the file manager needs an ad. But other than these two apps, I have not seen an ad on MIUI in any other areas, so yeah, good job Xiaomi. So who is this device for? The obvious answer would be gamers on the budget since this is the best performance you can get at this price range. But for non-gamers, this is one I would highly recommend too. The additional performance will ensure that this device stays speedy even after a year of usage. And the endurance, it is just amazing. Before I go, I have a recommendation for POCO. I hope that the next version will come with a desktop mode. Imagine being able to spend just $400 for a device that can act both as your phone and your computer. Of course, this is not a proper desktop replacement, but for people that can only afford one of them, this can be a life changer. And this can be a game changer for POCO. And that is the end of my POCO X3 Pro review. I hope you like it. See you soon.